markets actually have reduced their losses, or maybe if you look at the mid caps, you will say increase their gains. The advanced declines are moving a little more towards, say, 1.3:1, so to speak, or maybe you want to put it as 4 stocks in the green for 3 in the red. So it does look like the markets are getting a little more enthusiasm, at least the bulls are. Let's invite one more guest. Varun Goel has also joined us, and of course Mr. Tulsian is also here to give us some fundamental analysis of stocks. Varun, welcome. Are you all impressed by the PSU bank performance, or at least some of them? You all were not big aficionados of or admirers of PSU stocks going by your funds. You all had only SBI in your list. Will you all be increasing the gamut of stock picking from this basket?
Well, good afternoon, Lata. I think the PSU banks, overall, if we see this quarter, of course, the deterioration in asset quality has been slightly controlled. We, of course, believe that there is still some more cleaning up to be done, which should be completed by the end of FY17. But if we look at the earnings picture, I think most of the banks would still struggle to get back to the profit level that they had in FY14 and FY15. And I think one is better off being present in some of the better managed private sector plays of the whole BFSI basket. We like housing finance companies, we like consumer finance companies, because that's where the credit growth is happening, and that's where we believe the quality of balance sheet is a lot better.
Okay, well, since we're talking about banks, and PSU banks have been the big flavor of the last many days, particularly banks like SBI, let's listen in to Sanjay Dutt of Quantum Securities, who is of the opinion that the worst is perhaps over for the PSU banking space.
The PSU banks will outperform the markets in the next year or two. Worst is behind them. Things are starting to look better for the economy, so therefore obviously lending would pick up and lending would begin. I think interest rate cycle is not really a drag for the banks. So on balance, I think PSU banks are very well positioned. Even though they may have gone up 60%, I think still there are a large number of banks which look very attractive, that can still give 50 to 60% returns even from the current levels in the next year or so. So I think the rally in the PSU banks has probably just begun. So there is more potential ahead, no doubt.
Okay, so those are two views coming in on the PSU banking space. But let's continue chatting about some more stocks. Varun, hi, afternoon. I wanted to chat with you about the aviation space, because the Interglobe is one stock that you hold in many of your funds, more importantly the Focus 35 fund. And now we've seen, some recovery from the lows of trade, from the lows for many of these companies despite weak numbers. How would you justify that, and do you expect more upsides for names like Interglobe?
Good afternoon, Sonia. I think as far as the aviation space is concerned, there is no denying that the demand has been pretty good. We are continuously seeing 20% plus kind of passenger growth numbers, and we believe this demand will continue to hold on as long as crude oil prices stay benign. I think what's happening from a pricing point of view is that during the lean season there has been quite a bit of competitive pressures, which has led to decline in realizations, and that of course has impacted the P&L of most of the large players. Our own sense is that should from the third quarter onwards, once the festival season kicks in, this should get a lot better, and those players which are adding capacity, those players which are running capital efficient businesses would continue to do well from a longer term perspective.
Okay. Mr. Tulsian, is there anything more that you would fish for in this supposed rural area, rural-oriented stocks? Assuming that the monsoon has its play, is there any more stocks that you will fish for?
See, Lata, actually we have, need to take the sector-wise call. If I first take on the NBFC, I think we have already seen a lot of exuberance having taken place on that account, number one. Number two, if you see FMCG space, even FMCG, traditionally have been ruling with a rich valuation, and a while back we have discussed on Britannia. So you just can't keep on giving the positive bias or positive stance on the FMCG stock also purely on a rural theme because of the expensive valuation. Coming on the paint, yes, because paint industry is always posting Q2 Q2 numbers, but I've expressed my views a couple of days back also that in the paint, except for Shalimar Paints, I don't find any other, interesting ideas. Maybe allow these stocks to get correct by about 5 to 7% and then look to re-enter. But yes, one space, or one sector which comes to my mind is the agrochemical. If you see, Q2 is always traditionally the best quarter for agrochemical because you need the agrochemical for crop protection, maybe at the end of, just a month before harvesting. So maybe in the month of August, September, October, you see a lot of consumption taking place, and that gets largely booked by the companies into the second quarter numbers. So I'm keeping the positive stance on the agrochemical space purely from the rural or maybe monsoon or maybe agri point of view.
Okay, well, two stocks that are reacting to their numbers now. One of them is Stride Shasun. That one is tanking. It's down almost about 7% odd. As we were discussing earlier, the API business has disappointed quite a bit. In fact, the overall business are also disappointed on margins and profits. So that's something that the street doesn't like. 6% lower now. And the other stock to look at is Radico Khaitan. It surged 7.5% after its numbers. So that's one stock that the street really likes in terms of its earnings performance, 8% now. Mr. Tulsian, wanted to ask you your view on both these names. The Strides I know you track as well, but both on Strides and Radico, what would your view be? Are you positive on either?
See, Sonia, Stride numbers are really very disappointed, and you need to see it on a sequential basis, and we can't hide on the accounting standards, that having recast the accounts on the new accounting principles, you just can't hide on that. Q4 numbers were having an EPS of closer to 10, and Q1 EPS even on the recasted basis is showing an EPS of 3 rupees on a consolidated basis, with top line having slipped below 1,000 crore. So I'm not very positive on the Stride Shasun number, and in spite of the corporate development that the API business has been hyped off for about 800 crore or so, because the company has really disappointed on Q1 numbers. Coming on Radico Khaitan, in fact, if you take the call on this stock has not been performing for last maybe 12 to 18 months. Whenever we see the good numbers coming in, stock moves, breaches the 3-digit mark, moves to 100, 105, then again corrects back to a level of 90, 95. So I don't think that in this space, if you want to take a call on the brewery space, probably there are other stocks available, maybe like Pioneer Distillery, Associated Alcohol, Global Spirit, because they all have come out with good numbers. So I won't be taking a very positional positive call on even on the Radico Khaitan as well.
Okay, well, another stock which I have a feeling I heard from you some time back, Mr. Tulsian, Jamna Auto. It's like zoomed, doubled probably since March. Is there more juice in that stock?
Yes, Lata, it has, and in fact, if you keep that view, for maybe next 2 years, because I think the kind of growth, trajectory which has been lined up by the company is really very, very good, and I think they will keep continuing doing quite well for next couple of years. So amongst the auto ancillary, these are the few stocks, like Jamna Auto, Subros. They are really, or maybe the Wheels India, they are really very good stocks. Steel Strips Wheels. There are few stocks, which are not widely talked, but have a very great potential going forward, maybe for next couple of years view as well.
Okay, Mitesh, how are you positioned on the index itself? I know we have been chatting about how the market is sort of choppy around this 86 to 86.20 odd levels. But what's the call for say tomorrow's trade? Do you expect some more pressure on the upside or resistance at higher levels?
To be very honest, I think trading day by day isn't very rewarding. I think given the fact that it's choppy within a narrowing range. I think what we've been suggesting since yesterday is to sell the 8700 call and the 8500 put. We are approaching the August expiry. I don't think we are having any signals of this range breakout above 8700 or below 8500. And in the next few days, I do expect a very strong and a fast time decay of the options value. So I think that could be a good trade on the index.
Okay. Well, Ashwini, any of these stocks that you are tracking for a trading pop, stocks like Jamna Auto, Delta Corp, stocks that have just gone up and away?
See, Delta Corp I just spoke about. If you see the last 3-4 weeks, the amount of ground Delta Corp has covered, I think it's taken out its all-time highs of about 125, 130. So now it's getting ready for about 200, and today has been a special day for auto ancillary also. So Sona Steering, Motherson, everything has done well, So basically anything which has auto in its name has tended to do fairly well today.
In fact, we have seen that a lot of these auto ancillary companies that supply to Maruti have done pretty well in the last, weeks, couple of weeks. If you look at both Sona Koyo that supplies steering wheels to Maruti, Subros that supplies air conditioners to Maruti. Subros is up, about 13-14% now. So these are a couple of stocks that, 10% higher. These are some stocks that have been doing exceptionally well. But talking about stocks that have been doing very well, Varun, two stocks in your portfolio, in your fund that have done brilliantly. One is Britannia and the other one is Ajanta Pharma, both sitting at new highs, both have delivered stellar numbers. Would you at any point start to worry about valuations, or are these stocks that you're willing to pay a higher premium for because of the good numbers?
I think, in both the spaces that you mentioned, we see a very, very strong 3-year kind of earnings growth trajectory. If I look at the food and beverage space, I think the whole story of premiumization, continues to play out. I think incrementally as the disposable incomes increase, we would see people spending a lot more on branded food, branded beverages, and therefore both the top line and the bottom line growth in that segment should be quite good. As far as pharma opportunity is concerned, of course, the Indian market continues to grow at a healthy 14-15% kind of a growth rate for branded formulations. The real market, of course, is the US market, and we see a lot of mid-cap Indian companies going out to the US market, getting approvals for new products and making their presence felt. So those companies which have a good set of portfolio, which are present in the right therapeutic segments, will definitely benefit from the overall US opportunity, and therefore we would like to look at this opportunity from a 3 to 5 year perspective, rather than immediate earnings and valuation multiples. So we remain quite confident on both the themes going forward.
Okay, we will come back to you for more portfolio ideas, Varun. But for the moment, let's hear another person who picks stocks for the long haul on Unplugged this week. As we have been telling you, Anuj Singhal travelled all the way to Kerala. He caught up with Purunju Veliath, and here are some stock discussions they had.
I started picking a stock, Force Motors, and it was a very interesting thing. It used to be 425 rupees. This is Firodia promoted company, and Bajaj were the partners. And Bajaj had a holding of around 23%. They started selling. So, and the company's fundamentals have been on an increase. So there was some confusion, and some people were doubting the integrity of the promoters. I remember people were all selling when Bajaj started selling. So in such a way, nobody was comfortable buying it, that kind of a situation. But when I analyzed it, I had that knowledge of the relationship or the enmity between Firodias and Bajaj guys since last few decades. So I took it in a different angle. This can be an inflection point for the company. We have moved into Jubilant Life Science some time back, and it's almost $1 billion company. 55% of that is pakka very high quality pharma business, and I found they are very strong in the nuclear medicines kind of aspects, which is very niche business in which they are becoming global leaders in some of the segments.
Okay, now you know why Jubilant Life Sciences is up so much today. That was one of the stocks that Purunju spoke about. But let's get back to the markets now. Mr. Dulcian, wanted to ask you about some of these logistic companies, because once again, stocks like Snowman Logistics, Gatti, etc. have come back on the traders' radar. These stocks are up about 4-5-6% today. Is this a space that you would venture into now, or do you think the story is over for now?
See, Sonia's story is not over, but the kind of exuberance, which we have seen like Snowman, honestly, if you really ask me, I never liked the stock. It has seen to be quite expensive. Few of the funds, domestic funds, I don't want to name them. They have all these seem to be, having built the position. Maybe the close sources of those funds have made the positions. So, you just can't take the call. Maybe story is different for All Cargo, or maybe Gatti, or maybe TCI Industries, or maybe Oricon Enterprise, or to some extent dependent on Shreyas Shipping or maybe Aegis Logistic, but you just can't pick up any company which has a name as Logistic, because if you really see maybe Gateway District Park, even that was not holding that kind of potential. Even VRL Logistic, maybe post correction after the management clarification have come in that they are not entering into the private air charter, the positive call can be taken. But yes, story is seen quite intact, and you need to be very selective, and if you ride the momentum, I don't think that you are bound to burnt your fingers. So maybe story is intact, and now in fact that all those stocks having some growth potential like All Cargo, Gati, Oricon Enterprise, they all seem to have potential where the renewed call can be taken with a view of about maybe 3 to 4 months at least.
Okay. The markets are winding down. Maybe we just want to tell you who are the winners and the losers. The index itself has not lost much. 86.24, that's just about a quarter percent, not even quarter percent, 0.2% lower. Advanced declines continue somewhat in favor of the advances, like 5 stocks in the green for 4 in the red on an average. And the mid caps, of course, have performed very well with a 0.7% gain just at the index level. Among the big stocks that did well today, Tata Steel, Coal India, Oro Pharma, Hero Moto, Bajaj Auto. I mean, it has been a two-wheelers day. Whether it's two-wheelers or their ancillaries, those stocks have been doing well. Tata Power, ACC, Bank of Baroda, Yes Bank were among the other stocks that did well in the big cap space. Some profit taking was seen in Adani Ports after a long haul, and we also saw the tech stocks continuing to take it on the chin. They kind of escaped with minor bruises yesterday, but today we are seeing a 2.3% cut on TCS, about 2% cut in Tech Mahindra, 1.7 a piece in Wipro and Infosys. So the IT index, for which both Ashwini and Mitesh called a sell at even the index level, the charts have pretty much behaved as per prediction, not doing too well. But I guess you will have a long list of winners in the mid-cap space.
Oh yes, and in that sense, Lata, today was a good day of trade because every dip got bought. The mid-cap index had a very good showing, up 0.7%, and the market breadth was in favor of the advances, almost 900 stocks in favor of the advances. By the way, the cash market volumes picked up in late trade, so we'll go home with almost 20,000 crores in terms of cash market volumes. Lot of buying took place at lower levels. Delta Corp hit a new high today, 9% higher on Delta Corp. You had Radico Khaitan that rallied almost 7% after its numbers. Strong numbers coming in there. Look at that, double-digit gains on Radico Khaitan today. The space to really be in was auto ancillaries. So all the companies that supply to some of these OEMs like Maruti have done pretty well. Since we have 1.5 minutes more to go, let's get some final calls in on that front. Varun, I wanted your thoughts on some of these players, because in your funds you have made a lot of money in names like Maruti, but what about these ancillaries that supply to Maruti, the likes of Subros, Rico Auto, Sona Koyo? Would any of these companies interest you?
Well, we are quite positive on auto ancillary companies, whether they're making automotive cables, automotive lighting, shock absorbers and all those kind of things. We believe that this will be the year of revival in two-wheeler demand. I think end of this month we'll see around 50,000 crores of pay commission money reaching people's bank accounts. So I think discretionary consumption both on the rural and the urban side should definitely get a leg up. So both the OEMs and the ancillary companies should see very, very healthy volume growth this year, and therefore we are quite positive on the earning growth trajectory of these companies.
Okay. Well, Ashwini, your quick thoughts on say something as obvious as Tata Steel and Coal India. Both of them have seen fairly decent rallies. Good to go for more?
See, Coal India 330 was a strong resistance. Now beyond that, it's up to the government how much they want this to run. But I think 370, 375 is easily possible. Similarly, metals has started to rally yesterday. So probably Tata Steel could see 415, 420. But clearly the big trend is in the mid-cap space. That is where you'll get bigger movement rather than in the large-cap indices where stocks will move both up and down on probably even consecutive days.
Okay, so we end the day with a cut of almost about 0.2%. Not a bad day really. You could say it was a choppy day, but the Nifty recovered from its low. So 86.03 was the low point of trade, and we closed at 86.21. But all the action really was in the mid cap space. So more than 0.6% higher for the index.
Absolutely. Mitesh, any ideas for tomorrow?
Yeah, I think Infosys remains a sell, so I think that could be STBT. The other two I have on the buy side. One of them is UPL, which made a fresh high, finally managing to get past levels of 635, 640. So I think that should see spillover of momentum for tomorrow. I would buy this one with a stop below 635 for targets of 660. And Tata Power appears to be getting into the game again. I think it was showing good traction a few days back. That's a buy with a stop below 77 for targets of around 80.
Okay. Well, UPL did launch a product, Zeba, and that's been also pushing that stock up. But you'll have to say it's a good day of trade definitely for mid-cap pickers. Varun Goel, Mitesh Thakkar, Ashwini Gujral and Mr. Tulsian, thank you very much for taking us through the last few minutes of trade as well. We leave the markets in a fairly fine spot also because the global scenario has not been very good. In the European markets, we have seen much more red on the screen, and the Asian markets also ended largely with red on the screen. The ones that closed very early, like New Zealand and Nikkei, had shown a little bit of green, but all the later closing markets began to show red, as do the European markets. So in that context, the Indian indices stand out. Minor cuts for the Nifty, but some major gains for the mid-cap stocks. So a little bit of outperformance definitely from the Indian indices and stocks in particular. Well, with that, it's curtains on today's trading action, but a lot of company action coming up for you. The Pepsi India management spoke exclusively to CNBC TV 18's Shireen Bhan. We'll get to snippets of that extremely interesting conversation in a minute.